Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic guy, remember it so you don't have to. And welcome to Nostalgiaween, and I can't think of a better way to kick things off than with a movie series that's over 10 years old, if you can believe it, Hotel Transylvania. Released in 2012 and directed by animation legend Genndy Tartakovsky, I have no problem bragging that I was one of the few critics who really liked this film when it first came out. I guess on one hand, I can see why some people were turned off to it. It had the same cast as a lot of bad films made by Adam Sandler's production company, Happy Madison Studios, but contrary to what some believe, it's not a Happy Madison production. You can tell by the fact that it's funny. Okay, yeah, I've ripped on Adam Sandler films a lot, but I've made it clear he's made some movies I really like, and this series is among them. The minute I saw the trailer for this film, I thought it looked clever, and knew if it did well, it could be a new staple for Halloween films. I mean, look at it. It literally screams Halloween. But that would mean nothing if the characters and writing weren't fantastic. And thankfully, they're pretty good. Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend these are masterpieces, but what works in them does have staying power and makes them stand out even years later. The original centers around Count Dracula, played by Adam Sandler, and his daughter Mavis, played by Selena Gomez. They live in Hotel Transylvania, which Drac built for his daughter to keep her away from the dangers of humans. The idea worked so well that other monsters started showing up, enjoying long vacations away from those frightfully scary humans who, you guessed it, are seen as the monsters in this world. When a traveler named Johnny, played by Andy Samberg, stumbles upon the hotel, Dracula tries not to cause a panic and disguises him as a monster. Though ironically, he starts to panic when he sees Johnny and Mavis start to fall in love. Okay, so much of this is very standard storytelling, the overprotective father, young love, quirky side characters. The only real new element is that it's done with Halloween monsters in a hotel, which even that seems like a variation of Beetlejuice or Monsters, Inc., where a supposed scary world is given the modern, bureaucracy-ish take. What makes this movie work though is its energy and knowing when to turn it up and when to tone it down. I think people really underestimate how good the animation is in this movie. Yes, there's a lot of anime films that look more realistic or have more believable textures, but not only are the designs in this great, I mean, you're not going to confuse their take on these monsters with anyone else's take on these monsters, but everyone has an exaggerated yet unique way of moving. I love how Dracula will move at the speed of light, but his upper half is usually very still. This makes him move quick and precise like a hunter, but also makes for great comedy when he has to hide something. Johnny's always hunched over like he's either checking his phone or leaning in to check out something new, which makes sense being a young traveler. Mavis is much more grounded in movement because she doesn't experience many dangers, but she still has the restrained energy of someone who wants to break free. The mummy always sways like an S or a hieroglyphic. The werewolf barely moves because his family exhausts him. These are all subtle touches that are turned up to 11 when you factor in the hyperactive comedy. This movie is very fast, yet creative with its shots, usually throwing a lot at you in every second. Factoring in this movie came out over 10 years ago, it honestly moves like an animated comedy that would come out today, maybe even faster. But what might be a little surprising about this film to some people is that despite it being about some of the most famous monsters of all time, it's actually kind of sweet. It has elements of dark humor, which I think certainly helps give it a touch of an edge. But because of that, it does make you realize the friendlier / kinda cornier scenes are intentional. This isn't a movie that doesn't know how to be dark. It lets you know full well that it can. But a lot of the time, it chooses not to. And if it's done well and effectively, there's nothing wrong with that. The film's not very cynical or mean-spirited, yet it's still very funny with a lot of clever jokes thrown in. Some for kids, some for adults, and many for both.
Ow! Why did that hurt me?
They are getting fatter so as to overpower us.
My mistake. What is wrong with you people?
Is that real about the garlic thing?
Yes.
Wooden stake to the heart?
Yeah, well, who wouldn't that kill?
I like when I first show this film to people, they don't catch on that's Adam Sandler as Dracula. Okay, it's not an amazingly disguised voice or anything, but for a guy whose idea of a character is high-pitched gibberish, a lot of people I show this to don't pick him out in the role. Admittedly, it is an odd choice, but I kinda dig it as no other Dracula really sounds like him, and he's able to work both the comedic and heartfelt moments very well. When the film needs to be serious, it doesn't do it too long, but just long enough. The movie will stop to have a quiet moment with emotional lighting, and the actors play it with real conviction. It never feels half-assed. We've seen family films with dead parents a million times, and like I said, a lot of other conventional cliches this movie's utilizing. But because the film got us to enjoy these people and laugh along with them, we legit feel for them when they talk about their losses.
As a father, you do everything to keep your family safe, even if you have to break their trust.
It's familiar, but in the realm they created, it's believable. There's a nice moment of animation where Mavis sees a little bit of the sun. I feel like a more manipulative movie would ever cry or hug Johnny or something like that, but she's just hypnotized, like in another world. And again, that's believable and makes sense for this scene, resulting in a really nice moment. I love this ending too, where you think the big thing is gonna be Frankie getting his groove back and scaring the villagers. But the villagers instead cheer him on and they discover people actually kind of accept them now. Look at that smile on his face, knowing even when he has to hide, he doesn't have to hide. I'm sorry, this movie is crazy likable. Does everything work? I guess not. There are tropes of the time, like it has to end with a dance party, a few dated references here and there, and once in a while there's a joke or odd character moment that might be done a little awkwardly. But I don't know, I felt a spark with this movie when I first saw it. I just knew it was going to be something that people watched every year around this time. This easily could have been direct-to-DVD quality, but they turned in something that tried much harder than it needed to. Again, it's not flawless, but it delivers on everything it promises. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's creative, it's surrounded in most things we associate with Halloween or classic monsters, and it has something for both kids and adults. Thankfully, the public agreed because 3 years later, a sequel was made. And another. And another. How did they fare? Well, like this film, it's a little bit of everything, good and bad. I'll fill you in after this. In 2015, Hotel Transylvania 2 was released. Most of the same team came back, and once again, based on the critics' score, I was expecting this to be a lackluster film. I mean, not only is it a sequel, it's an Adam Sandler sequel. Surely this is where things must go awry. When I saw it, I kept waiting for the movie to go south and give me absolute garbage moments. But thankfully, those moments never came to me. I guess there were underwhelming moments, but I actually saw this as a damn decent follow-up to the original. It continued the story, not just repeating the last one. It upped the humor, expanded the world, and still had the same amount of energy, comedy, and heart that the previous one did. The story centers around Mavis and Johnny getting married and giving birth to their son named Dennis. When Dracula discovers Dennis might be half vampire, him and the boys try to help him discover his inner monster, but find their usual and literal camping grounds are not quite what they remember them to be. Johnny distracts Mavis by taking her on vacation, and all this is being done while trying to keep the news of Dennis being half human from Dracula's father Vlad, played by Mel Brooks.
I raised my son to hate and kill and steal the souls of humans like a good boy.
Despite Vlad having a great design and a great name for that matter, I am glad he's kept out of the picture until the last third. If it was just a keeping a secret around the house story, I think I would have hated it. But having them travel to their old stomping grounds and constantly being disappointed only gets better when they return home to find he's there. You know inevitably Mavis has to find out about their scheme, but in keeping with the movie's humor, that's not the end of the joke. We hear Drac jokingly saying some harsh things about her mothering, and you know that's gonna make it back to her in one way or another. But the way it does is amazing. It isn't just a recording she plays back for him, but it's a music video somebody made after it was posted online for millions to see, and it shows him repeating the insult over and over.
Mother's already.
That is so many layers of humiliation, it's hysterical. On the other hand, I guess I can kind of see where some people might be turned off. They still have a dance number at the end. They have an even more pointless one near the beginning.
What's that, the electric boogaloo? If I show you I can bust a move, will you try to fly then?
And the climax certainly has a lot of energy for kids, but not really many laughs for adults. But still, all the movie has to focus on is what these characters would naturally do in these situations. Because these are very naturally funny characters. When something goes wrong, it's fun to see all the different ways they'll react and usually make things worse. Most of the heartfelt moments still work too. It's pretty adorable when Dracula looks at his daughter during the wedding and sees her once again as a little kid. The fact that Vlad is persuaded in a pretty timely manner shows he does value his family. Even the connection between Dennis and the Wolfman's daughter is pretty friggin' precious. This was just a throwaway character in the last one, but seeing her interact with him is pretty damn cute.
Enjoy it, because once I graduate business school and start running a company, you're not gonna get home-cooked meals like this anymore.
Again, I can't pretend this is a fantastic sequel. I mean, the original is better, but I've seen so many bad follow-ups or phoned-in family films or here we go again stories that I really do give credit when a sequel comes through the way it should. It has new jokes, it evolves the characters rather than de-evolve them. It has what we liked about the original, but it doesn't just do the same thing again, it adds new elements. Honestly, when I watch Hotel Transylvania around Halloween, I do usually put this on soon after. It pairs perfectly with the original, giving you what a sequel like this promises. I guess it didn't win everyone over, but it definitely won me over. And I guess it won enough people over because another 3 years later, they made the second sequel, Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation. As you probably assume, this was the first one to come out during summer instead of during Halloween. This was also the first film to finally win the majority of critics over. So me being a contrarian dick, I didn't like it. First off, I'm not the biggest fan of family properties that are meant to be one thing but then randomly go on summer vacations, whether it matches or not. But then again, Adam's Family Values did something similar and that was pretty great, so maybe it's just a nitpick. My biggest issue with the movie is, I just didn't find it that funny. A shame because the premise is actually pretty clever. Dracula's told he stays inside the hotel too much and he should go out and see the world. The family plans a monster cruise for him, but little do they know that the famous vampire hunter Van Helsing, played by Jim Gaffigan, is trying to hunt down the famous vampire with his daughter Erica, played by Katherine Hahn. Yes, these movies still have great casting. Trying to woo old Drac so that she can kill him. But she may discover the more she pretends to fall in love with him, the more she might actually fall in love with him. Yeah, again, nothing phenomenally original, but it has promising ideas, and again, it isn't a repeat of the previous stories. This one relies a lot on slapstick though, and sadly it isn't that great. Maybe a lot of kids really liked the climax of the last film and they said, hey, let's just make the whole entire third movie that. The energy is still there, and I'm sure little kids would enjoy how constantly bouncy it is, but that's just it. It is constant. Where the other films had a lot of energy but would pace it out with a variety of moods, this one is just always moving, always active, and you get desensitized to it after a while. Remember where everyone had a unique way of moving in the other films? Here, everyone moves the same. I don't really look forward to what Drac, Mavis, Johnny, Frankie, or Wolfman's reactions are gonna be because it's the same as everybody's. Hyper over the top. There's also this strange addition in every movie, or should I say, subtraction. Because the character designs seem to be getting simpler. I thought with every passing movie the animation was supposed to get more detailed, but each one seems to simplify it even more. Tartakovsky is certainly more familiar with hand-drawn animation. That's one of the things I like about the films. It's the speed, expressions, and designs of 2D, but the details, weight, and mass of 3D. Like the 2D is the exaggerated part, but the 3D is the grounded reality. So when something hits, you really feel the hit. In this one, they look so simple and so flat that nothing appears to have any weight to it. They all move like deflated balloons. They don't really appear that solid, so anything that happens to them isn't gonna appear as painful and therefore not as funny. Maybe it was a time and budget thing, or maybe they were just more comfortable making them look flatter, but either way, the animation didn't get across the size and scale that the other movies did. And yeah, were you annoyed by the dance numbers at the end of the other films? Oh, wait! There's a scene where a giant sea monster has to be defeated by finding the catchiest song to play. This already sounds pretty gimmicky, but who knows, maybe we're about to see the next Kate Bush Stranger Things moment, I don't know. Well, it is anything but that. The song they play and dance out to is the goddamn Macarena. Jesus, even when the song was popular, it was the worst. Maybe that's the joke? Like, it's so bad and that's why it's so funny these characters are dancing to it? But I don't know, the only one annoyed by it at first is the grandpa, and even he gets into it. Maybe it's like Vanilla Ice dancing in Ninja Turtles 2, like, oh, it's so cringy, you gotta love it, but yeah, this really doesn't work for me. Say what you will about the other dance sequences, but they had energy and some friggin' original music. I honestly couldn't believe I was seeing what I was seeing with this. Why the Macarena? Of all the laughably lame songs you picked, why was it the one that wasn't laughably lame, it was just lame? Who the hell would enjoy this piece of holy shit? Is that an M next to those views? Okay, I guess somebody made the right call. Maybe they just leaned into entertaining little kids and found the bounciest thing they'd want to watch over and over. I mean, okay, sure, I guess it is a kid's movie too, but that's all it felt like now, a kid's movie. And sure, if I hadn't seen the other two, maybe I would have found this passable, but I did see the other two, like most people should. If there's a 3 in the title, obviously you're supposed to see the other ones. And this just didn't seem on the same caliber. I guess I'm glad it seemed to make a fair amount of people happy. I mean, God's butt, that's a fair amount of people. But for me, it just didn't have the same ghoulish magic as before. But I guess they figure they had one more go in them because we were given the final sequel, Hotel Transylvania 4, Transformania. Released this year, actually. Yeah, a lot of people forget this was even a thing. It's like January movies have a bad reputation. This was the first one not released in theaters, but instead on Amazon. It's also the first one not directed by Tartakovsky, and the first one not to have Adam Sandler as Dracula. In a pretty cool move, they got a YouTuber who went viral impersonating Sandler's Dracula, Brian Hall. And give him credit, if you didn't tell me they switched him out, I'm not sure I would have noticed.
You can spend the entire day pulling them out and placing them.
Now it's time to start the actual planned part of the celebration.
Oh, did you see that? Who is that guy, Sir Breaks a Lot?
Oh, hey, maybe wavy. Just making a couple of tiny adjustments.
He did a pretty damn good job, not just getting down the impression, but also the jokes and emotional moments. It was a good choice on the studio's part. With that said, this seemed to be the film that audiences and critics finally agreed on. And not in a good way. It wasn't hated, but it wasn't really liked either. I guess I found it okay. The story is Dracula is gonna retire as the owner of the hotel and hand it over to Mavis and Johnny. When he hears Johnny's plans for the hotel, though, he freaks out and makes up a real estate law that says only monsters can own it. To fix the problem, Johnny asks for the help of Van Helsing, who I guess is a good guy now. I don't care, he moves through this lab pretty funny. And he turns Johnny into a monster to help him out. But it doesn't stop there. The device accidentally transforms Drac and his friends into, you guessed it, humans. Van Helsing says the only way to change them back is to find a crystal for his device hidden in the jungle, and that's exactly what Drac and Johnny set out to do. Will friendships be formed only for lies to come forward and misunderstandings abundance arise? Yeah, but it's not as bad as you'd think. Eventually. So one of the interesting criticisms I find a lot of fans of these films have is kids really seem to like Johnny, and adults really don't. Johnny is a silly doofus who's very loud and energetic. Children, of course, love that, and most grown-ups find it okay as long as he's kept in check and not overstaying his welcome. This film, he's the main focus, so of course he overstays his welcome. Having him and Drac alone is not a great idea. Plus, we're focusing on something we've already focused on before, Drac being okay with Johnny. In terms of emotions, there's not a lot here. The first third is also really rough to get through. It's a lot of zany slapstick of the previous film turned up even wackier. I kinda felt like Tom writing his will for his forthcoming death, like you know there's no way out of it. As the film goes on though, and we see Dracula getting used to being human and even Johnny getting used to being a monster, it does slowly get better. The other monsters getting used to their lives as powerless humans is also pretty entertaining. Honestly, the transformation stuff is easily the best part of the film. It is fun to see the bizarro versions of these characters. It's kinda like seeing the main leads in Shrek 2 as their opposites. It's a neat role reversal. The jokes are very hit and miss. Like I said, in the first third, it's a lot of misses. But once the story actually gets going, they realize just letting these characters be themselves in these funny situations is enough. They don't need to force that much. On that note, when we get to the part of the liar revealed story where the liar is revealed, it is pretty lame, but it's also pretty quick. And they do still work in a lot of creative sequences. Probably my favorite is when Mavis has to get through this cave as the sun is rising and all the hotel members come together to shield her. The animation here is so precise and creative, it's kinda worth the price alone in my opinion. As you can tell, the movements of the characters seem unique for the individuals again. Like in the previous film, I feel like Mavis would just crawl behind these kids, distorting her body because that's how all the characters moved, but in this one, they have her turn into a bat because that's not how she moves in this movie. Little additions like that do make a difference and eventually add up. On that note, this is probably the cheapest looking of the films. My guess is this one had the smallest budget, but it looks like a movie that's still utilizing everything it can. Like, it doesn't have as much as the previous films, but it's gotta make the most of it. And yeah, maybe that's the best way to describe it. My guess is this was made during COVID, and I'm sure going to Amazon there were production issues left and right. But it looks like they tried their best and made what I think is a passable flick. Is it a great ending to what I think is a great series? No, but I guess it's better than the last one. I guess I can't be angry it went out on just an okay note because it's honestly impressive we got as much creativity as we did. I think a lot of people looked at the cast, the fact that it was a slapstick cartoon, and assumed it was going to be for the lowest common denominator. But I think these movies tried much harder than people expected and gave us more laughs than maybe even the producers were expecting. These films are still being watched every Halloween, and even the versions I don't think are all that great aren't awful. I think they're just passable kids movies, where the others seem better at being for both kids and adults. I know in some ways it seems like a strange series to praise, but I like classic Halloween monsters, and I like good writing that knows how to have fun with them. I'm sure they're not everybody's thing, but I think for people who enjoy the sugar high of Halloween while also laughing and celebrating their favorite monsters will get a kick out of them. They're not perfect films, but they're perfect fun. Kids can admire the bouncy, fast-paced energy, and adults can admire the in-jokes and artistic designs of the world and characters. With that said, what are your thoughts? Do you think these are just annoying children's films to put on to shut your kids up? Or do you think there's a lot more to them? Do you think they get better, think they get worse, like all of them, hate all of them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and perhaps I'll see you the next time you check in.
Welcome to Hotel Transylvania!
I'm a nostalgia critic, and Nostalgiaween has just begun! I'm Boo.
Wooden stake to the heart?
Yeah, well, who wouldn't that kill?